Good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirit's book. We are on the item on moral perfection. The item is virtues and vices that we started last week, reminding everybody that the spirits told us that the biggest obstacle for our self-improvement is self-interest, right? Pride and selfishness are comprised, which are the spirits told us are the two main impediments for our progress, are both combined when we have self-interest, meaning that we think of ourselves before others. Okay, we've been through that. We are on question 898. I'm going to ask Philip to read for us. Philip, you're on mute, so you can unmute, please.
Physical life is only a temporary stopover, and our future life is what we should care about primarily. Is there any point in trying to acquire scientific knowledge that only refers to the objects and wants of this world? Of course there is. This knowledge enables you to benefit humankind. Also, if your spirit has already progressed in intelligence, it will rise faster in the spirit life and learn in an hour what it would take years to learn on earth. No knowledge is useless since it all contributes to your advancement in one form or another. A perfect spirit must know everything, and progress must be made in every direction. All acquired ideas help forward development.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, right? That Kardec using using reason and logic. He asked the spirits, if this life is just a life, temporary stopover, that what really matters is our spiritual life, why should we try to acquire any material knowledge or scientific knowledge that relates only to this earth, if it doesn't really matter? And the spirits are very direct in saying, of course it's important, right? The intellectual evolvement that we have to acquire encompasses all knowledge of the physical world and of the spiritual world. So when I was reading this, I was thinking, Jesus as a perfect spirit have all the knowledge related to our physical world, right? Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to be the governor of the planet. So in order to get there, he needed to acquire the knowledge related to physical world. So what the spirits are telling us here is, you live in the physical world, take advantage of the opportunities here, right? The problem is when you focus only on the scientific, let's say, or the material knowledge of the physical world, and you forget about your spiritual development. Then you get into trouble when you go back to the spiritual world, because you don't really know anything and you are not prepared. But when you do both, that's the two wings of the evolution, right? The scientific intellectual evolvement and the spiritual evolvement. And the intellectual evolvement that you can acquire on this incarnation is related to what we have here on earth. You cannot have intellectual knowledge of what's happening in the far part of the universe that we don't even know about it. The intellectual knowledge is the chemistry, biology, physics, geology, everything related to the physical world. Because in learning that, you are building on your general knowledge, right? Like Elmo says always, right? The intellectual knowledge is easier because you accumulate on everything you learn belongs to you. You just move to the next step. You are accumulating. On the moral knowledge, you have to eliminate imperfections, which is always harder to eliminate than to add. So yes, it's important, right? Again, if you focus only on the moral evolvement when you are incarnated here on Earth, are you wasting your time? No, because that's the hardest part, the moral evolvement. You're not. But if you waste opportunities to acquire intellectual knowledge here, you're wasting opportunities to progress. So again, we don't have time to learn everything. I cannot be a doctor in this incarnation. You know, it's my direction is a different direction. I will need to learn eventually, but it's not, we have time for limited things. But for the limited things that we have to acquire the knowledge, right? And we have the opportunity to focus and to use it to our evolvement, because that, you know, once you become knowledgeable in one area, other areas related to that knowledge will become easier for you to learn also. So, you know, the biology, the areas related to biology, right? Once you learn one of the areas, the other areas will come easy. If you learn, if you focus on mathematics, for instance, how many applications mathematics is, right? So if you can use it to progress easier in the other areas related to mathematics in the future, right? So it's very important to acquire scientific knowledge or knowledge that refers to objects and ones of this world, because that's where we are living. Okay. Okay, questions? Comments?
That's one of the many reasons for reincarnation, is to educate ourselves about the physical world and the physical sciences. And as the Spirit puts here, it's the best way that we can develop ourselves to help those spirits are also incarnate. To help someone without having knowledge of anything becomes very difficult.
And even dangerous.
And
Yeah, depending on the help, right? Okay.
899. Out of two rich individuals who both use their wealth solely for their personal satisfaction, one was born into affluence and has never known want. The other earned his or her wealth by personal labor. Which is more shameful? The one who knows suffering and does nothing to relieve it. He or she experiences unrelieved pain. Too often, this person no longer remembers the difficulties she has endured.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, because our first reaction is to think the other way around, right? Someone that has suffered and then became wealthy theoretically should have more right to not share their wealth because they know difficulties, and someone that doesn't know difficulties and has wealth has more reason to share their wealth. And the Spirit tells us it's exactly the opposite, right? Someone that knows suffering is more responsible to help those that are going through suffering. Someone who doesn't know suffering, never needed anything, is less responsible for helping others, again, for lack of knowledge. We have to remember, the more we know, the more responsible we are. So those that have come from very humble beginnings and have accumulated wealth are more responsible to help those in their original situation than someone that has more wealth. Again, both should, you know, as we learn and evolve, we know that our responsibility is to help others. There's the motto of Spiritism: without charity, there is no salvation. So these two individuals that are not using their wealth to help others are responsible, and both will be will face the consequences of not helping those in need, right? But what they're comparing here, who is more responsible, right? And the spirits are very clear: the one that knows suffering and does nothing to relieve it. It's you know, it's different from our first thought, right? But actually, when you go into it, it makes sense, right?
It makes sense. That is in the gospel about the spirituals. That is one of the lessons of the gospel in accordance to the spirituals. The one who have experienced suffering is more responsible to share his wealth because he has already experienced and know how it is to be there.
Okay. All right, 900.
Can those who constantly accumulate wealth without doing good for anyone find an excuse in the fact that they will leave a large fortune to their heirs? This is a compromise with a guilty conscience.
Yeah, I changed the word there. It's because the word that you have in that doesn't make much sense. It's not bad conscience. It's a guilty conscience. It's a compromise with a guilty conscience. What do they mean here? If you are using an excuse that you have heirs that you want to accumulate the wealth for them, what you are using is an excuse. You know that you should help others. And what you are compromising your guilty conscience in not helping others, using as an excuse that you have those that you have to take care of. Again, there is nothing wrong in taking care of those that are related to us, our children, our family. So if we can provide for them, we should. It's our responsibility as parents, as children, as siblings, whatever. But if we are doing that and ignoring all the rest, if we have wealth, again, sometimes we barely have to for ourselves and for those loved ones. That's not the case. It's talking here those that constantly accumulate wealth and do not share the wealth with others, using the excuse that they are saving for their families. Those are guilty and responsible, and they are going to face the consequences of someone that practice no charity, because taking care of your loved ones is a moral obligation. It's not charity. Charity is when you help those that are in need, that are not related. When you are helping your mother, you're not doing charity. It's a moral obligation that you have, right? You can think that is charity, but it's not. Charity is when you help someone in need that is not related to you, that you don't have the moral obligation or the family obligation.
Close friend.
It's charity.
It's charity.
Yes.
No matter how close you are to that person.
Because you don't have a legal in terms of
Sure, like the way that you sounded like that. Like,
again, you have a gray area there, right? Like so you say, I have a cousin. Do I need to help that cousin, or don't I need to help? Is it charity when I help my cousin, or it's a moral obligation? It's a gray area. So you have some people you may have some people that live with you that are not blood related, but they've been raised together. So it's a personal judgment, what's moral obligation and what's charity. It's a personal choice. in general, we would say family relatives, it's a moral obligation. But maybe
To biological parents. Like,
let's say, you know,
who they are, maybe like the race, you would to like
yeah,
turn disconnect to them.
again, the other day I read a question on one of these newspaper columns about you know, ethics. It's a column about ethics, and the guy was asking, my father never took care of me. He abandoned me when I was 2 years old. I never had any relationship with him, and now he's very sick and close to die. Do I have any responsibility to pay for his funeral? And the answer from the guy was, ethically, you don't. He never took care of you. Ethically, we're not talking. Spiritually is a different story. We can discuss here eternally, right? But ethically, he said, no, you don't, because he never took care of you. So you cannot be responsible for someone that never cared for you. You have no responsibility. So, you know, it's again, it's always, it's a fluid, it's subjective. But according to Spiritism, you have the obligation, and we talked about this last week when we talked about maternal and filial love. You have at least the obligation of being thankful for your parents for giving you the opportunity to reincarnate, if they didn't do anything else, because there is 3 times more spirits on the other side trying to reincarnate and not finding an opportunity. So at least that, according to what we learn in Spiritism, is your responsibility. Again, how much are you going to fulfill this? It depends on your conscience. Again, in the end, it's our conscience.
Sometimes they're like parents, like they do provide like with the best and like education and comfort, but emotionally they can get used. And it's
Yeah, family is always a problem,
it's
you know.
mental to it's
Yeah,
and the other way around too, like
yeah.
offspring.
Hello. Kitty.
And another, I mean, change a bit of the subject is like we see like the past like 2 or 3 decades, extremely like wealthy people like Bill Gates or like they are leaving their wealth like
Most of the wealth to charity and very less for the children.
percentage to their
Yeah, but you know,
offspring and-
when you have $100 billion and you leave $3 billion for each child and the rest to charity, so it's enough for the children. But anyway, I understand. It's admirable.
Like they work like the daddies like
Yeah,
they had that mentality like oh,
yeah, everything for the families, the mafia mentality.
mafia, and,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, no, I think, but it's a sign. It's a sign of the evolution. It's a sign of evolution of humankind, right? Which is exactly that. Accumulate wealth and distribute to those in need. That's a sign of evolution, right? It's still imperfect, far from being perfect, but eventually our ideal is when we have less wealthy people, very wealthy people, and less very poor people. You balance everything, right? You have, like you already have in countries like Denmark, Finland, and Sweden, for instance, right? The average salary of the top salary is like 8-10 times the lowest salary, and here in the US is like 1 million times the difference.
How about Brazil with developing countries?
Yes, but even I'm talking. No, I'm talking about developed countries. We're not going to go to subdeveloped countries, because then the difference is because of the whole characteristic of the lack of evolution of the countries. But I'm talking about developed countries, right? Germany, France, US, UK. It's the discrepancy is much bigger than Denmark, New Zealand, Finland, right? Because those are already countries that are moving into a world of regeneration, or are countries of regeneration, let's say, and the others are, you know, getting there or very far from there.
But you have to take into consideration those countries are very small, like the population. It's almost like a village. When you take like Austria, like 10 million people, it's a population of what? Like, million.
Well, but you have
Switzerland, the same thing. I think
But
it's easier.
it's yes and no. Because there are countries with small population that are underdeveloped also.
Yes. No, but I say it's easier, like when you have a developed country, but it's very.
The
small.
fact that it's easier doesn't mean that they make it, right? Yeah, Sweden 150 years ago was terrible country to live. You know, there is a movie that I always remember. Yeah, The Conqueror, you know, that talks about the conditions in Sweden in the late 19th century. And it was hard. Ireland, right? Ireland, and there was a big famine that destroyed all the hope, you know, that's why you had all the immigration here, right? I read the other day, I was watching something that Ireland before the famine had as many people as they had 100 years later. Population didn't grow. Incredible, right? They lost so many people that the population went back to the pre-famine levels in 1950 something. It's incredible. And even today they have an 8 million population. They had the same population as the UK, as England, and England has 40 million people. 30 million?
No, I mean, the entire UK,
No, England.
only England, okay.
Yeah.
The entire UK might be like 80,000, like
Yeah.
Wales and like Scotland and.
That's the whole, yeah, I don't know the whole, but Ireland was the same population as England, and now they have 8 million, and England has, I don't know, 40 million, 50 million. Anyways, back to our topic here. 901.
Imagine a scenario with two miserly individuals. One forgoes the necessities of life and dies in want, surrounded by treasures. The other is self-indulgent and cheap with respect to others. This person winces at making the smallest sacrifice for others or serving a noble cause, while the cost of indulging personal passions is inconsequential. This individual is always short on funds when kindness is asked for others, but has plenty of money to satisfy any of his own whims. Which of them is more disgraceful? Which one will be worse off in the spirit world? The one who is recklessly spending money on personal pleasures because he or she is more selfish than miser. The other is already undergoing a part of the atonement.
It's an interesting question again, right? So you have two wealthy individuals. One that doesn't spend anything either for him or her or anyone else, and the other that spends everything with him or in him or her, but doesn't help anyone. Who is more shameful and who is going to face worse consequences? And the Spirit say the one that spends a lot of money on him or herself, but doesn't spend on others, because the one that doesn't spend any money is already struggling with his or her own limitations, let's say, right? Because the misery of the others is the same misery that they live in, because it doesn't matter. I read something, you talked about Bill Gates, right? I read something that he said, that the true rich person is not the one that has a lot of money, but the one that is working on building the progress of him or herself and others. There is a lot of wealthy, rich people that are rich only in money, but they are not rich they are not rich people in the true sense. And he gave the example of a lot of people that win the lottery and then a couple of years later already lost everything because they were never rich as a rich person. They were just possessing money that they didn't know what to do with it. So, you know, someone that has a lot of money and doesn't spend anything on himself or herself and the others, you're already suffering, right? Because for you not to spend any money that you have, you are what? Focused and concentrating on preserving the money. So you're already struggling and suffering with that. Again, like the other question, both are guilty, both are responsible, both will face consequences, but here comparing one to the other, if you are spending a lot of money only on yourself instead of helping others, you are more responsible, you are more selfish than one that, because when you don't want to spend even on yourself, it's less of a selfish and more of a disease, right? Because you are, you know, you suffer from lack of ability to use the resources you have, contrary to the one that is spending lavishly on him or herself and not helping others. And again, I'm thinking about some of they are in the middle, right? That spend a lot on themselves, but also help others. What about those, right? I read the other day that Jeff Bezos, the Amazon guy, he bought the biggest, largest yacht, made it build the biggest, largest yacht in the world. Spent like, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars or something like that. But he helps a lot also. He helps people in need. So how do you judge that? He's going to have to deal with his own conscience, right? In the end, that's the story. So he's going to have the merit of those that he helped, and he's going to have the guilty of spending money where it wasn't really necessary, right?
But what's necessary, what's
It's different, yes. Again, it's different from each one of us, yes. And again, at the time, you know, to build a yacht like that, you're giving jobs to how many people, and people that are going to work and live in the yacht. So there is all this, but do you really need a yacht that, again, it's we're not going to judge here, each one to their own needs. And that's exactly what we say here. What I need is different from what you need is different from what Elmo needs, right? To be in peace with your conscience and be able to help others. You know, I may need more or less than Elmo to find peace of mind, because if I don't have peace of mind, I cannot help others. I'm struggling with myself, right? So in that point, you are right. Maybe that's what he needs, but again, it's in the end, our judgment is our own conscience that is going to tell us if what we did was the best path or not. It's never the perfect one, because we're in perfect spirits, but it was the best or not. Okay. Questions, comments here?
I have a comment. I feel like for people that are highly successful, it's almost like you have an expectation that morally they should know better, right? And they can make, because a lot of the times they don't know better, right? To them, the success that they had materially to be compensated, right? Give them pleasure here, and that's the level of knowledge and understanding they have morally, right? I think always when we judge, and I was thinking about it the other day, you judge thinking they should know better. And it's exactly that paradox. Like they don't, they just have a limit of their moral side that we assume that they should not have. When they're highly intelligent, obviously, that's basically you brought it up, very successful, extremely wealthy and smart, but then again, I'm not privy of how, you know, his sense of moral sense to develop. And that's also going to take some of the responsibility away, right? Let's say he wasn't that high in thoughts in that sense.
Yeah, I read research some time ago that that a large number of the successful CEOs, top CEOs, have some traits of being psychopaths, because it's you know, it's what it takes for you to reach that level, right? You have to think, well, the characteristic of a psychopath is you think only about yourself, you don't think about others, and you don't care. You have no empathy for others, right? And it's a trait that is needed sometimes to achieve the levels that they achieve, the success that they achieve. Again, I remember reading that. I don't have the numbers and I don't know the research, but it kind of goes to with what you say, right? So a guy like that reaches that level. If they have no empathy, they're not going to care about helping others. And we have a lot of very wealthy individuals that have no interest in helping others. And we're not going to go into examples here, but we know, we read in the news, right? You have Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, which they are completely the opposite, right? Warren Buffett is another one that is probably the best example of someone that, you know, very wealthy that helps.
George Soros.
Yeah, Soros, yes. Soros, he gets involved politically a lot, so he creates a lot of noise for him that the others don't. But you know, Warren Buffett, the only thing he has is a plane, right? Because he lives in Omaha, it's easier for him to fly out of Omaha in his own plane instead of getting 3 planes to get to.
People, even before it was a trend to do this, like, this woman, like Christina Onassis, she died long ago, many years ago, like in the 80s. Back then, she was like the wealthiest woman in the world. When she passed, like she was in her mid-30s, she left like only 25% of her fortune to her daughter, like one, 2 years. And the rest to charity. That's amazing. Like, and she was so low profile that was never like people they learned that like a few years ago.
But even if you go to 150 years ago, yeah. Yeah.
She was born her father was like 3 years.
But even if you go 150 years ago, it's here in this country, right? You have Andrew Carnegie from the Carnegie Hall that we have close to us. He donated a lot of his money. He built a lot of things for society, and some other of the very rich people of that time, they already had some.
Yeah, but like 75, I mean, her father, when he passed, like he created a foundation, like the Alexander Onassis Foundation. That's based here in New York, like half of his fortune was for the foundation. And then her daughter, his daughter left like 70% of her half. Charity, that's like, I find that's amazing.
Again, it's spirits that are already more evolved, definitely, if we're studying from the spiritual side. So they come here with this opportunity
But at the same
and responsibility.
It's so many problems, like it's like every conceivable way, like.
Yeah, again, we're imperfect spirits. We're going to struggle, but how we end the life is what is going to make a difference for us, right? What we did with our lives here. The next one is a good one that we always ask. Philip.
902. Is it wrong to wish for wealth as a means of doing good? Such a desire is admirable when it is pure, but is it always truly disinterested? Don't people first desire to do good for themselves?
All of us want to win the lottery so we can help others, right? Everybody thinks about that. If I ever win the lottery, and then I'll help everyone in need, right? And the reality is very different, right? Because immediately after you win the lottery, you create different needs for you, right? You increase your needs, and then you need more money, and then you have less to help others. So you don't need to win the lottery to help others. It has to be part of who you are, or the effort that you make to evolve morally and intellectually is to help others. So the spirits here say such a desire is admirable when it's pure, but how many of us it's really pure? How many of us want to win the lottery for ourselves, right? And then of course I'll help others, right? That's what everyone will say.
Can I make a funny like analogy, like you're saying like about pencils, like let's say someone from like middle class person. You're talking about like trips, like traveling earlier, like to tonight, this evening. And if I buy like a first class ticket, like, do I need that? I do not. I can afford it, like, but like, should I spare that money to help others? Like you're complaining like about your physical, I think, like, hotel you are and. They spend like $10,000 like traveling for like buying like first class or business class, as opposed to pay like $800.
And it goes back to your needs, right?
Like,
Yeah.
you're not, you can travel like.
Yeah, but it goes back to what you think you really need, right? And it's a personal judgment. That's why it's important when we talk here about your personal needs, right? So do you need to buy a first class ticket? No, you don't. Can you afford and it's not going to make any difference? Again, you know, someone that has billions of dollars helps a lot of people. Can they afford for them to pay 10,000 or to pay 1,000? It makes no difference. No, yes, when we're talking about us winning the lottery and it's you suddenly.
It's just like, pay like 10,000, they should have like. Spend this money like helping people close to me. Family or charity.
It goes back to your conscience, right? It's in the end, we're going to be judged by our own conscience. Yeah, that's the reality.
That's when you differentiate wants or need. Shaquille O'Neal, having or not have money, he cannot travel on the regular economy class.
Oh, no, yeah.
He needs to go. It's not, for him, it's not a want, it's not comfort, it's not luxury, it's a necessity. Try put Shaquille O'Neal on number 6, you maybe gonna struggle with it. If you will. I saw Shaquille O'Neal inside in Georgia, instead of a hammer, it's a big car, remember this hammer thing? And he was so crooked, it was the thing.
I mentioned that because
So for me, luxury, I want to go, I can afford, it's my money, it's like, for some people, it's a need. And that's why you have to make the differentiation there.
it's like, because I mentioned that because I have in my family that people they are like that, like. I have the two extremes, like people like, oh, I'm not spending with your new AC because I need to like help others, or I'm not getting a new car, or I'm not getting this, that's necessary. And the other way around too. Like people.
Yeah,
Again, perhaps for them, it's not a need, perhaps they do well with the normal heat of the summer and they don't really need it, they rather put that money in assistance areas, good for them. For the people, it becomes a need, they have to do that.
Like one of my grandmothers, she has a sense of guilt, like. Anything that she does, no, I shouldn't do, like, she.
okay. All right, 9:03.
Is it wrong to study other people's faults?
What are we doing here?
To do so merely for the sake of criticizing or exposing them is wrong, because it demonstrates a lack of charity. To do so for your own benefit to avoid replicating those flaws may sometimes be useful, but you must not forget that understanding the faults of others is one of the elements of charity. Before criticizing others for their flaws, you should look at yourself and see if others could criticize you for the same faults. The only way to profit by such a critical examination of others' faults is by trying to acquire the opposite virtues. Are those you criticize cheap? Be generous. Are they proud? Be humble and modest. Are they callous? Be gentle. Are they cruel and petty? Be great in everything that you do. Basically, act in such a way so that it may not be said of you, in Jesus's words, that you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not see the beam in your own.
Yeah, that's a very important question, right? Because the question is it wrong to study other people's fault? It's not, you don't ask, is it wrong to criticize other people's faults? We all judge. It's part of who you are. We look at others, we judge, we compare to ourselves, we compare to what we think they should have done. Now, what we do with this judgment is what they're talking about here, right? The question, right, Elmo, that what we do, before criticizing, is it going to be useful? Yeah.
Speak only if it's truth, good and useful.
Truth, good, and useful, right? All three of them.
Or truth and together.
Yeah, because if it's true, but it's not useful for the person or for anyone else, keep it to yourself, right? Are you going to help, or are you just going to harm telling the truth? If you are going to harm, you should keep it to yourself, right? Again, we go back to Chico, I said many times, and I love it, right? When he was criticized, and he never replied. And he said, if they are right, I have nothing to say. They're right. If they are wrong, they don't deserve my answer. That's, if we can get to that level, of course, we're very far. But that's exactly the right attitude for criticism, right? Because if they say something about you that they are right, we are going to argue always, because we enter into a defensive mode, and we try to defend and justify ourselves for our own mistakes. We make the mistakes, we don't recognize them, or sometimes we recognize to ourselves, but we don't want to recognize in public, and we defend ourselves, right? And in reality, what Chico said it's true, right? If someone criticizes you and they are right, they're right. We should try to learn from it. And if they're wrong, why should we pay attention, right? Doesn't really matter. They're wrong. But that's not how we behave. We enter into fight. If they're wrong, we want to fight them to prove they're wrong. If they're right, we want to fight them because we don't want to recognize that we are wrong, right? Unfortunately, that's how we behave. So again, the way to evolve is to analyze ourselves and analyze others. But analyzing is not criticizing, and it's not putting out there in the open if it doesn't help anyone, right? And there is a lot of people that say, oh, it's the truth, so I have to tell because it's the truth. Sometimes the truth hurts more than helps. So why should we tell the truth, right? For instance, when a person suffers from Alzheimer, for instance, in the stages that they are forgetting things, but they still have the capacity of understanding things, and they lose a loved one, you don't keep telling them that the person that they loved is dead. It's dead, because they are going to suffer every time. Every time they're going to suffer. So you don't. Is it that you are lying? No. You are avoiding hurting them. telling them a truth that is not going to help in any form. So that's what they mean here by, knowing when to tell the truth. And that goes back to what I said, right? It's true, but it's not good for the person that is going to receive the news, because the person is in no condition of processing the news, right? So again, if the only way to profit by such a critical examination of others' faults is by trying to acquire the opposite virtues. So if I see something wrong in one person, instead of criticizing, first look at myself. Am I different? Am I not doing the same thing? Am I able to overcome that and work on our self-improvement? That's the key. Okay.
Like I said, the most important thing here is to read the question very carefully. The question says study. It doesn't say to criticize, to be judgmental, to be out loud talking about it. It's to study, it's to analyze, it's to reach a conclusion that would help you to better yourself, or perhaps to help you to help that person to get free of some of those faults. Then yes, there's merit to it. But if you're doing that just to find yourself to be better than that person, you are just show this to not be any better than that person only because of that. Perhaps even feed into that person, right? What you criticize, then you're wasting your time. You're wasting an opportunity of learning to better yourself and helping others. I think that the word study there is very important.
Okay. Next question follows a little bit on that.
904. Is it wrong to probe the plagues of society and reveal them? That depends on the motive behind this action. If a writer's only purpose is to create a scandal, he or she obtains personal satisfaction from presenting images or situations that are corruptive rather than instructive. The mind perceives the evils of society, but those who take pleasure in portraying evil for the sake of evil will be punished for doing so. In this case, how can we judge the purity of intention and the sincerity of the authors? It is not always necessary. If authors write good things, you profit by them. If they write bad things, it is a question of conscience. However, if they want to prove their sincerity, do they do it by the excellence of their own example?
Right. Nowadays, we live in the times of finding scandals of famous people and publishing the scandals, right? And the paparazzi chasing people to profit from their misdeeds. The magazines that or online magazines nowadays, not real magazines, but online articles, right? That like I heard a long time ago that I love, right? That it separate the wheat from the chaff and publish the chaff, right? Yeah. So, we are all responsible for what we are doing with the information we are discovering or receiving, right? Someone that discovers something that is damaging to society, and in publishing that, it's going to only cause more harm than good. If a moral person wouldn't do it. Now, if you discover something that is harmful and by publishing it, you are going to help society fight and overcome it, is your responsibility, moral responsibility to publish it. But in most cases, what we do is publish for the sake of being ourselves in the news, to find the limelight on ourselves because I was the one that found this big scandal or big thing that happened to someone else, and I'm the one, right? It's a selfish act, and it's not only selfish, but it's mean, right? Because you are causing harm to others for the sole purpose of profiting from it. So you are creating a lot of responsibility for yourself. And we live in a society that it is happening a lot.
Yes.
Social media helps a lot in these things, right? The way we portray ourselves in social media, the way we behave in social media, the way we hide behind what we write in social media causes a lot of disturbances and a lot of harm. And it's a shame. We are going to have to learn to evolve from it. We are going to have to learn. Is it bad? Like when we have, when we first found out about internet start becoming popular. Is internet always good? No, not necessarily, but can we live without it nowadays? It's so important for everything that we do that the bad that comes with it, we need to try to control, try to prevent, and try not to use ourselves. So the second part here, when he talks about those, remember at the time, authors' books were just you didn't have TV, radio, anything like that. You had books. And he's asking about the intention of the writers. If they write good things, even if the authors write good things and do not do anything with it, if we profit from it, they have some merit. If they write bad things, again, we read in some books of André Luiz, there is one specific book that talks about someone it's in the domain of mediumship, right? That they go to a bar when the author is writing a very scandalous article about a certain lady that was going to cause a lot of harm, and there was this spirit connected to the lady that was there guiding him and inspiring him on what to write. Again, it's the responsibility of the author to open to that influence, and the consequences will also be the responsibility. Again, if someone writes a book and that causes harm to people, it's involuntary, but you are responsible, right? Books that, I remember that a long time ago, there was an author, I think in the mid 20th century, that wrote a book that caused a lot of suicides. I think his name was Rain Marie Wilk, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure. You are responsible. If you put in paper, if you put out there, and this causes harm to others, you are responsible for it. Okay. I think
905.
Yeah, I think that's it's not the last one yet. Go.
There are great books that are full of moral teachings from which their authors have not derived much moral profit, despite having the progress of humanity. Is the good those authors do by their writings counted to them as spirits? Professing the principles of morality without subsequent action is like having a seed without completing the sowing. What is the point of having the seed if you do not make it bear fruit to feed you? The authors are even guiltier because they possess the intelligence that enables them to understand. By not practicing the virtues they recommend to others, they fail to enjoy the harvest they could reap themselves.
So think of a self-help book, right? Nowadays we have a lot of self-help books, right? The author writes a self-help book that helps a lot of people, but he or she doesn't follow their own advices and do not change themselves. So they have the seed, but they didn't bear fruit for themselves. Do they have the merit of being able to help others? Yes, they do.
Yes.
And they are going to receive the rewards, of being able to help others. But they are falling short of their potential of fully achieving what they offer to others and didn't use for themselves. And because the more you know, the more responsible you are, they will have a bigger responsibility on what they lack achieving for themselves when they knew it was the right approach. A lot of people benefited from that, but they themselves didn't benefit from that. So that's what the spirits are telling us here. The more you know, the more responsible you are. If you put something out there that helps a lot of people, you don't help yourself, you are going to face consequences for it. Okay? Okay, we have one last question, so we'll finish.
906. Is it wrong for those who do good to be conscious of the goodness of their deed and to acknowledge that goodness to themselves? Since human beings are aware of the bad they do, they must also be aware of the good they do as well. It is only by this recognition of their conscience that they can know whether they have done good or bad. By weighing all their actions according to God's law, especially the law of justice, love, and charity, they can decide whether they are good or bad and can approve or disapprove of those actions accordingly. Therefore, it is not wrong to recognize the fact that they have triumphed over evil and rejoice in having done so, provided that this does not turn into narcissism, because that would be as reprehensible as any of the faults over which they have triumphed.
Okay, this is important, right? Is there anything wrong if I recognize my good deeds and become proud of what I did? Nothing wrong in that, because that's how we understand that we are evolving, right? Because the practice of charity, it's not part of who we are. Once it becomes part of who we are, it will come out naturally and we won't think about it, like when we breathe or when our heart beats. But until then, if we have to make an effort to do charity, it's an effort that we need to acknowledge for ourselves. We are doing good. We should be proud of ourselves for doing good and recognize that we are making the effort. There is nothing wrong with that. On the contrary, the Spirit tells us that in recognizing the fact that we have triumphed over evil, and we should rejoice, right? Every time we resist a temptation and we overcome that temptation, there is nothing wrong in being proud of ourselves, right? It's not prideful in the sense that in the wrong sense that of self-interest. It's prideful in achieving our moral progress. That's what we are trying to do here, right? So if we don't have it, every time we do it, if we recognize we do it, that's perfectly right, because it helps us doing it again. By feeling good about doing something, will help us do it again to feel good again until it becomes part of who we are and we no longer need to think about it. Okay, it's very important, this understanding. Sometimes people practice charity and it's different from asking for external recognition. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about internal recognition. I went there and worked to help others. I spent the whole afternoon in the hospital trying to help and assist as voluntary work. And after I finished, I was very happy and proud of myself. There's nothing wrong with that, right? If that's not something I do naturally, I have to make an effort to go there. It's I challenge myself to go there and do it. After I finish, I should be happy with myself, proud of myself for achieving what I needed to achieve. That's how we progress. Okay? All right. So passions for next time. So before we finish here, just note here for everybody, next week, next Thursday, will be closed. We don't have a meeting. I'll be traveling, Elmo will be traveling, Sarah will be traveling. Fortunately, we won't have our studies next Thursday. The center will be closed. We won't have it even online, okay? We are going to advise you via email, but just to let you guys know that we won't be here next Thursday. So Thursday, June 8th, SGNY will be closed, okay?
And Monday.
This Monday is not a holiday, was last Monday. This next Monday is not a holiday.
This was last.
Yeah. Monday we're back. We are here. We'll be here, and the only day where we're going to be closed is Thursday. Wednesday, chapter 5 and 6. It's the last book club, and then goes on summer break and comes back August 16. So the book club still have the June 7th meeting, and then will be closed for until August 16. Okay. There is no lecture this Saturday by the United States Spiritist Federation because it's the General Assembly, the yearly assembly that we have. So we won't have any lecture this Saturday. This Sunday is the first Sunday of June. So we are going to be studying the book Between Heaven and Earth, chapters 5 and 6. Okay. I think that's it. So please remember, we are closed next Thursday. Okay. Carol, can you do our final prayer, please?
Sure. Thank you very much, John, Elmo, and everyone participating. Thank you, Philip, for reading. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks for the opportunity to be together again for our studies of the Spirit's book. Our responsibility and moral obligation is to help others. One who knows personal suffering can help others to relieve their difficulties and suffering. Help those who are in need. Be at peace of the mind regarding personal wealth and sharing material resources. Ideally, strive for a balance which allows the responsibility between the self and society. We are learning daily and evolving. Initially, let us take stock of ourselves rather than jumping and immediately criticizing others. Analyzing actions can be helpful and a worthy study for self-discovery. We know that the combination of justice, love, charity will eventually be a natural outpicturing of virtue. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding us this evening. And may we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and for our loved ones, our directors, the counselors, mediums, and workers. We pray for inner peace, and we pray especially now for world peace and for those who are suffering in the material and physical world, as well as the spiritual realm. We pray that SGNY and all Spiritist centers throughout the world may grow, expand, and be protected. As we close, we humbly ask for safety, protection, and guidance as we return to family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we go forth now as beacons of love, of light, of peace, and of charity. So be it.
Thank you.